This is all a very far cry from Brian Beeston's beginnings in the dairy industry, a modest 115 cows on 40 hectares at Ngatea on the Hauraki Plains. These days, it's 5,000 cows milked all year round on 5 properties scattered around the Mayfield and Mount Peel areas of mid-Canterbury. So does he own all this outright, or are there other investors?
We're involved in 5 farms in Canterbury.
And 2 of them you are outright 100%.
Two of them are 100%, yep. And 2 of them are 100%. One of them's 80%, one's 75%, and there's 2 farms that we're 33%. And
is that fairly common in the large herd industry, that sort of structure?
It's become more common because it's access to finance, bankers bank winners to a point. And so because we've also come through a 10-year period of awesome growth, and we may never see it again. And it was on the back of probably lamb prices. But what we did do, we produced milk. We made money. And when you made money, we could actually do something else. And so it was a combination of capital and money. A lot of people still live on their farms that's gone up in value, but they don't make any more money. And they're ending up like the sheep farmers today, but own a big asset with no cash flow.
In large-scale dairying, ownership models differ sometimes in a minor way, but is the Beeston enterprise typical of the way large herd businesses are owned?
Probably one of the unusual ones. I mean, there are a couple of
groups.
So
what way do they tend to form then?
Mostly just 1 or 2 farms, and it's normally a family farm. They've used one farm to buy a second farm. There's a few corporate farms out there, which was the Spectrum Dairy Group, Sinlay, where what they did, they actually were springing boarded. They were using existing owners as a shareholder. So they went to a sheep farm and say, look, we'll convert it for you. We'll put the money of the cows in. You own the land. We'll all be third shareholders each. And they built up to about 8 farms like that. And then also too, I mean, the biggest probably developer in Canterbury has also been Mr. Hubbard. In the last 30 years, he's actually, I'm just thinking between the sheep farms and the cropping farms and dairy farms, he's been the banker for most of his people. And the success, and we've seen in Canterbury, would never have been there without a guy like that.
There's a big difference between running a couple of hundred cows and a herd of 5,000. That's required a big expansion of skill sets on the property. There are the usual managers and workers, only more of them. Brian's the boss, who doesn't get his gumboots dirty much anymore and calls himself the dreamer. Wife Annette does the calf rearing and record keeping. There's a close relationship with the local bank manager and accountant, an office manager, and a network of other farmers for advice. As he runs his rapidly expanding business, there's no sign of a halt in his plans. Brian admits he hasn't always been right.
The typical problem with Canterbury was, and even Southland, is you bought a farm, you put a dairy, like a 50-bell rotary on a 200-hectare farm, and you're the only dairy farmer. Next thing, 2 years later, your neighbour says, do you want my piece? And so these farms grew, and so a guy grew from a 50-bell rotary milking 650, 700 cows to milking 1,000, 1,200 cows through the same dairy, which caused issues. And what we found in the last probably 5, 6 years, people now are putting second dairies in. People are cutting the large herds back to a probably 800, 900 cow farm, because what we found is they got too big, too unmanageable, both in cows and people. It was just killing the system.
The health of his animals is of paramount importance to Brian Beeston, and while we were there, a demonstration of just that, when team leader Richard spotted a cow ready to calve. Richard had decided this cow just needed a little bit of a hand to give birth, rather than leaving her to go it alone out on the paddocks.
Just a little, nada.
And after a good tug on the ropes attached to the calf's front legs, out he came.
You just hold it there for a second. There we go. Into the bull.
So one healthy calf who's bonded well with his mum. But are the necessary skill levels there for proper care of the animals in large herds?
In the South Island, with the large farms, the new dairies, the new grass, the new opportunities, the cows are doing twice the production, okay, walking twice the distance. And so, and this is where some of the people say, oh, fertility is a real problem today. The problem is we no longer employ a mum like mums used to be at home. Mum's at home now, she's out working. And now modern cows like that. this modern cow's not doing 3,500 litres of milk, she's doing 6,000 or 7,000 litres of milk in the same period.
But what about the public perceptions of the large dairy herds expanding all over the Canterbury Plains, their hunger for water, and the problem of effluent disposal? It's called dirty dairying, and large herd owners catch a lot of flack over it.
I mean, we make a real point of being good, to be good at what we do. A lot of our problems is that somebody's clicked onto a word, and because dairying has probably prospered in the last 15 years in New Zealand, it's a tall poppy syndrome. You know, if we don't turn around, because there's probably 2 to 3% of farmers that aren't doing a good job. But it's 2 or 3% of drivers on the road that are either drunk or speeding. Do we call every motorist, you know, drunk drivers? But this is what's happened with dairying. It's become a slogan, a negative comment, which I really hate.
As we prepared to say farewell to Brian Beeston, we just had to ask for his prediction of what he thinks the dairy industry will look like in 20 years.
More of the large herds. The average herd size will probably be 600 cows. South Island will be producing 50% of the milk. And I'm hopefully more ownership back into the people running the farms. Because the farms have become big, expensive, like my last farm's worth probably 15 million. There's not many people can walk around and buy a $15 million farm. So it's actually putting ownership back and breaking that into small pieces again for ownership of the people that run it.